Hello, welcome to Xiaoyan's Forum. Today is September 24th, and right now time is Pacific time, 9 a.m. And here is our dear friend Tom. Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And Tom worked in FBI for almost 30 years, and he worked as a assistant director for 5 years, and he's retired now. And thank you so much for spending time with us today, Tom.
My pleasure.
Yeah, there are some important questions like every time. So, the first question is about the letter, and we're still talking about the assassination attempt to Mr. Trump, to President Trump, and DOJ just released a letter written by the killers, by the killer. His name is Routh, and in this letter, he actually encouraged people to continue to do or to finish his job to kill President Trump, and he even awarded $150,000. So this is a big issue. The people just ask why DOJ released this letter. Are they want more people to do that or encourage people to finish his job? Why they do that? So this
You
is
know,
the
every other investigation being run by DOJ relative to Trump, the first one in Butler, Pennsylvania, that assassination attempt, all of these investigations, Department of Justice and the FBI are so secretive. They don't say anything about it.
right,
And all of a sudden now they put this out,
right,
and you would almost think they would like to get Trump killed.
right.
You would think because, the defendant in this case
Hmm.
puts this letter out. They don't have to release that. They don't have to put out things that would incite
Right,
violence. And
right,
here, you have an incentive. If you were thinking about killing Trump and now you think, I could make $150,000.
right.
If I did that, I became a paid assassin. And
Hmm.
they put that out. And you would think that with as much trouble as they have trying to keep Trump safe right now, that only makes it worse. It's almost, to me, it's almost like, gee, it would be far better for the administration if
Hmm.
Trump were killed.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I agree. So it's like they openly encourage people to do that by release this letter. And
Yeah.
also, I have another question is where the money comes from. This guy do not have much money. So is he just empty check or he did have some money? We don't know, right?
Somebody is funding him across the board. He travels from Hawaii, he goes
Right.
to Ukraine, he comes back to North Carolina, then Florida. Who is paying for all that travel when he only has, a couple of dollars in his bank account,
Mhm.
and he couldn't, that wouldn't pay for one flight, much
Right.
less all of these flights, all of the hotels, all of his support, all of his meals, everything along the way. And then now, where would the $150,000 come from to pay an assassin? Now that he's
Right.
in jail and he'll probably stay in jail, maybe the rest of his life, but
Hmm.
now they have to find somebody else. And so what he's doing is putting out an advertisement. I'll help you be rich, finish the job. You killed Trump. And I think it's despicable that they did that.
Right, right. I saw Bill Barr come out and say that it's unbelievable they do that. And he just like you described before, that he said if you want to release this letter, at least do some edit. You don't put the whole letter out like this. And also remember last time we talked about Florida wants to take the case or join the case, investigate together. And we got some news or from some sources said that they don't want Florida to get involved. They do not allow them to get into the crime scene. So how could they do that?
Well, it's interesting because to me, Florida has every right. They have dual jurisdiction or co-jurisdiction
Right.
with felonies committed in Florida, the
Hmm.
attempted assassination of somebody, the
Hmm.
weapons violations, everything that they have pretty much violates state law as well as federal law.
Right.
So the Department of Law Enforcement, DLE, in Florida has every right to be investigating, especially with the encouragement and support of their governor, DeSantis. So to me, if they don't allow them to at least do, a reasonable amount of investigation, then we'll see. Maybe Florida will indict federal authorities for obstruction of justice or obstruction of their process, because what they're doing, they don't have to work together, but they can't be obstructing what Florida is trying to do. And
Mm-hmm.
if they are, to me, that's against the law.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Department of Justice and the FBI is so biased, and
Mm-hmm.
now they make no effort to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
No effort whatsoever to hide the way they feel about Trump, the way they feel about anything. And obviously, they don't want the Department of Law Enforcement in Florida to get involved in this as honest, aggressive
Mm-hmm.
investigators who are then going to share with the public as much as they can. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that what's happening is so obvious and so horrible that somewhere along the line, this has to come to an end. And, most of these investigations take a long time. They
Right.
could take months and years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Biden administration and Merrick Garland, their ability to obstruct investigations by state and local authorities is going to run out in a couple of months. Their ability to obstruct is going to end when they're out of power, at the
Mm-hmm.
latest, January 2025. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and they could still face charges at the
Mm-hmm.
Florida level for what they're doing if that's what they're going to continue to do. So I
Right.
think it's going to be a very interesting study in constitutional law and
Mm-hmm.
in the system of law we have in the United States, federalism,
Mm-hmm.
federal, state, local. So we will see. We will see everything that happens here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Department of Law Enforcement in Florida and their governor, DeSantis, in the short run, aren't going anywhere. But Joe Biden and Merrick Garland are. So we'll see how long they get away with this and
Mm-hmm.
how severe they want to make this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. But for people like us, when we saw what happened there, we know that they are covering something. They do not
Absolutely.
want
Yeah.
anyone interrupt their coverage for the crime. So,
Right.
this is really sad to see. Like they are just out of their mind. They don't care law and order as DOJ, as FBI.
No,
So,
it's
and
pretty clear. It's a political agenda, period. It's not
right.
law enforcement. It's not justice. None
Hmm.
of those things. It's
Right,
not supporting the Constitution. It's
right,
doing what they can to, prosecute Trump, convict Trump, put him in jail. Worst case, have him killed or turn their backs on all of the threats that are coming to him. That includes Secret Service, by the way.
right.
So they are not diligently protecting President Trump,
No, not at all.
ex-President Trump. So that's
Right.
obvious. It's obvious in what they're doing. And that's why you notice when the FBI and the Department of Justice are running an investigation like Butler, Pennsylvania, you don't
Mhm.
hear any more about it. You
Right.
don't hear any more about this kid's connections and who was supporting him and
Hmm.
who was on his social media contacts.
Right.
But now it's a different story in Florida with the state authorities breathing down the neck of the federal authorities.
Right. So everything might change after this election, that we hope.
Oh, it's gonna change one way or the other.
Right. Yeah. I like your description, one way or other. So we wish the good way. And talk about the election. The Congress is filled at SAFE Act. So people are very disappointed about that. What do you think about this failure for the Republic Congress?
I don't know. The Republicans seem to be so wishy-washy, so easily intimidated, so easily, kept in a box. And I think it's just a tragedy that they don't exercise their rights as
Right.
members of Congress, that they exert their power in a good way. And we just don't see that. We don't see it under any of the past speakers of the House, uh, including Johnson. And I think that that's a shame too, that we don't see Congress do more to fulfill its duties.
So it looks like they're fear of something, afraid of something. What are they afraid of?
Well, they're afraid that the donors like the deep state. They like the Biden administration and all the neocons supporting the wars and all of that. And so they're threatening, the Republicans absolutely, like any other member of Congress or most members of Congress, they need the funding. They need the campaign contributions. So they're going to do what they can to get that, to continue the money flow to them to be able to stay in office. And of course, members of Congress, they're almost constantly campaigning. Their term is only 2 years. So
Mhm.
about the second they take the oath for the next term, if they get elected, they're already campaigning for 2 years later. And in that case, they're sucking up to their donors and the donor class and the military industrial complex and all of that. And that's why you see them take the positions that they take.
So we cannot see that people in power or for the people, by the people. It looks like it's for the donor, by the donor.
Yes, it does.
So
It
that
sure does.
yeah, and also do you notice that for the Congress and they explained their Plan B by Johnson. It's really killed me. He said the DOJ asking for the budget, the new budget, I think it's about 350 million dollars, and they hold the budget until the DOJ give the report of the last assassination, Pennsylvania assassination of Trump. The due date is August 31st, and the DOJ did not give the report. So the Congress, Johnson said, now we can give you the budget, but you need to give us the report. So it looks to me it's so weak to
Very
deal
weak. Yeah,
with DOJ. Yeah, it's
very
so
weak.
disappointed. And then talk about the election. What do you feel about the election? I mean, do you really believe that Trump can win? And also, how about the survey and the polls, the numbers? Do you believe the numbers? They
No,
have different
no,
polls.
most of the polls are crooked. Um, one of the most accurate is Rasmussen.
Right.
And the head of that company has done many interviews of their procedures, their techniques, and why they're more accurate. And
Mhm,
these other polls, whether it's CNN or ABC or CBS,
mhm,
so biased. And they make no bones about that. So they've got Kamala Harris all pumped up that she's right up there with Trump, or maybe ahead by 2 points in some states and all that. And you look at Rasmussen and some of the polling they're doing, and they're saying, no, Trump is leading in the battleground states.
mhm,
He's leading in the rest of the country, especially the so-called flyover states, because
mhm,
people fly over the central part of the country to go from California to New York, or California or the West Coast to Washington. And the rest of the country they ignore. Oh, that's the flyover country. That's the conservatives and the MAGA people and all of that. And so, they're trying to say that they have enough votes to overcome that. And Rasmussen and a few other pollsters that are more reliable are saying, no, that's why the Electoral College matters. And interestingly, historically, that's why the founding fathers wanted an Electoral College. They
mhm,
did not want a national election where the person with the most votes got the office,
mhm,
because they knew then that the whole country at that time in our history would be subservient to Philadelphia,
mhm.
to New York, two, three big cities would rule the country. And the
Right.
rest, smaller states, would have no say in anything. And
Mhm.
then as the country grew to where we're at today, you have the same situation. The
Right.
states of New York, California, Illinois, with their big cities
Mhm,
like Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles,
mhm,
that they would dominate
mhm.
the vote, like Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in
Yeah, she
2016,
wants that.
but
Right.
she ignored the
Mhm,
other states in the Midwest, the electoral college states. She
Mhm.
ignored the Rust Belt states, the Pennsylvanias and Ohios and Michigans. And at the time, Bill Clinton was telling her, get out there. Don't take it for granted. Go to those states in her typical arrogant style. No, I don't need to. I'm winning. Well,
Mhm.
she did need to and didn't do it. And
Mhm.
then later, when she doesn't get elected, then she uses the excuse the Russians helped steal all this nonsense
Mhm.
that when Trump says it, he's against democracy. When she says it, that's the right thing to say.
Mhm.
Um, so that's part of the problem is they ignore all of these middle states that
Mhm.
matter.
Mhm.
And based on that, and based on founding fathers were right. A few big cities would dominate the whole country all the time if they did not have the electoral college.
Right, that's true. You know what? Talk about California. People will say California is deep blue state, right? And then from my observation, I don't think so. I don't think so. You know what? I went to a Trump rally at Poway, which is a small town at Southern California. These people are there for Trump, for MAGA, for over 4 years, every single Sunday. And they got a lot of support, a lot of support. I went there and I just live streamed from there. It was so surprised me in the small town, so-called deep blue state. And they
Yeah.
have, yeah, different state in California, different cities in California. They do the same thing. So, just
Well,
like
you're hearing that about New York State.
right.
Um, Illinois is another example. When you look at those states, the couple of big cities in the state dominate the popular vote,
Hmm.
but they don't dominate it like they have been in the last couple of elections. So they're possibly accessible, and that's why you see Trump spending a lot of time in New York.
Hmm.
Um, they think they could win New York. They could flip it.
Hmm. So it looks like we have about 5, 6 weeks, right? Not too many weeks until November 5th. And it's a battlefield right now. And this morning we see a news that FCC just grant Soros to purchase 200 radio station around our nation. And this 200 radio station can cover um, 165 million population. And then the FCC have 5 member, 3 are Democrats, 2 are Republican. So 3 vote yes, 2 vote no. So this bill passed.
Mm.
Well, this still passed, and he right now control 200 radio station. When I read the news, I just feel that this country is controlled by Soros, by these globalization people, not by American people, not even by the Congress. So,
Right.
so from when we this country becomes like that?
I think it's been a gradual march toward Marxism for several years now, for a couple of decades. It's
Hmm.
just that now, um, especially with the election of Biden, it's just gone crazy. It's gone all of these policies, all of the Democratic Party basically, I
Hmm.
think it's been captured by Marxists. And that's why you see this. So if you have 2 Democrats or 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans on a committee or on a ruling body of one of the networks, whatever it might be, those Democrats stick together so strenuously. Gone are the days where you had Democrats say, I'm going to vote my conscience, or I'm going to take a hard look at this and not go with the party line automatically, but look at what's best for the country and what's best for the voters. And we're just not seeing that. We're
Hmm.
seeing them stick together, uh, as I've said, like a herd of rats. So when you get some really stupid idea from the Democrat side, they all back it up. They all stay with that.
Right, right.
So, a good example is you have the Republican House of Representatives bring impeachment charges against Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas.
Mm-hmm.
And when it arrives at the Senate, constitutionally, what's supposed to happen is the papers are delivered to the Senate. The
Mm-hmm.
Senate then is supposed to hold a trial
Mm-hmm.
because letters of impeachment are similar to criminal indictment.
Mm-hmm.
So it means charges are being alleged, a trial should happen. And, you saw Schumer ignore it. So when those charges were brought up, or those impeachment charges were brought up a couple months ago, he should have accepted that, start the trial. The Supreme Court Chief Justice presides over it. The trial is held in the Senate chambers. The senators, the 100 senators are the jury. And then you have, who's going to prosecute it, select number of people picked by, in this case, the House of Representatives, and in this case, the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have any of that. You had Schumer basically tear it up, like Pelosi did with Trump's inauguration address a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He can't do that, but he did it. And who's gonna bring impeachment against Schumer? Nobody. What are the Democrats in the Senate going to do? Nothing. They like they're going to go along with this. And then the House Republicans are intimidated by it.
Right. It's really sad to see the American becomes like today's almost a communist party. So for this election, if we cannot bring Trump back, I don't know where the American gonna go to. And then also for the debate, um, Kamala Harris asking for a second debate at CNN, but Trump said no, we will not do any other debate. And his reason is it's too late. People are start to vote already, so no more debate. Do you think it's a smart choice to do no debate anymore?
I think Trump's looking at it, his campaign people are looking at it that he has more to lose than she has, and that she, is losing.
Mm.
And that what's happening is that you have all these national polls that I mentioned are very corrupt.
Right.
All the polls sponsored by network television channels and networks. And the Kamala people, the inside campaign experts working in that campaign,
Mhm.
know that those polls are phony. They know that polls like Rasmussen are
Right.
much more accurate. And
Mhm.
they're looking at this and they're saying, no matter what those networks say, no matter what MSNBC or CNN or any of them say, she's losing. She
Mhm.
had that big, excitement from the convention and everybody's cheering. What a great candidate. But deep down, they realize how flawed she is. She
Right.
can't do an interview properly. She can't think on her feet without a prompter and all of that, speech writers helping her. And I think they know she's going to lose.
Mhm.
She's not getting, she herself is not getting her message out by choice. She
Mhm.
could be putting out her message and she's afraid to do it. So you don't see her do very many legitimate interviews with a legitimate journalist. And then the
Yeah.
journalists are set up to give her softball questions that are easy to answer and make her look good. And, so every time she's been asked in so many different venues,
Mhm.
well, what are you going to do to help the economy? What are you going to do to help the middle class voters have the more income and have the economy? And she does not even come close to answering. She goes into a lecture of when I
Right.
was a little girl, my family was, this or that middle. We don't want to hear what your family did when you were a little girl.
Mhm.
What will you do day
Right.
one?
Right. Exactly.
What policies will you help the energy industry? Because
Mhm.
that's a big factor in inflation. How much it costs to do agriculture with diesel fuel skyrocketing or gasoline in other vehicles. So she has no solution. She just goes into a history lecture of her being a child, and most people now are getting to the point of, wait a minute, that's not that's not a good answer.
Mhm.
And so we'll see. I think they know now she's hurting. Now, for the first debate, she was able, with her preparation, to memorize a bunch of, actually more than 20 lies that she
Mm-hmm.
could just spout out.
Mm-hmm.
And the moderators on ABC didn't even call her on it, didn't even tell her that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true that, what Trump said in Charlottesville at that riot. Trump had already said that he denounced the
Mm-hmm.
Nazis and the neocons and all of that did that riot.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he was asked about, well, what about tearing down monuments? That's a different, that's not supporting a riot. That's just saying, you have these historical monuments. When you go to Richmond, Virginia, for example, there's a street in downtown Richmond that is, one Confederate statue after another from Robert E. Lee, the different generals that are heroes of the Confederacy, but they were historical figures. And
Mm-hmm.
the people should learn about history instead of tearing it down. So,
Mm-hmm.
what Trump was saying on the issue of whether historical monuments should be
Mm-hmm.
taken down, well,
Mm-hmm.
there's good people on both sides,
Right.
which is true,
Mm-hmm.
which is true. But they twist that, and Biden's done it, I don't know
Together.
how many times. Now
Mm-hmm.
she's done it in the debate and other times where he says there's that the rioters, the Nazis, the people that were doing the riot, well, there's mostly good people on both sides. He didn't say that. That's a complete lie. That's a
Right.
complete distortion.
Mm-hmm.
Or how they've distorted what he said on January 6th,
Mm-hmm.
where he said, go to the Capitol and peacefully protest. No,
Right.
they twist that to like go to the Capitol and have a riot
Mm-hmm.
and leave out the part that he offered thousands of National Guard troops that the mayor of Washington and Nancy Pelosi
Reject.
didn't allow.
Right.
They rejected. So all these different things where he has said something or made a policy, they
Mm-hmm.
just lie about it. And then
Mm-hmm.
the people hear the same lie over and over and over and start to think, well, maybe you keep hearing that, it must be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just like a Nazi. And if you repeat the lie for 1,000 times, it becomes true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They just did whatever the Hitler did. And then the situation about the president. I remember 19 no 2016 when Hillary Clinton and Trump are debate, and people just saying that, okay, Hillary, you cannot win. I see some people just type, you cannot win because America is not ready for a women president. So in this
Yeah. See,
situation,
and that's another distortion.
uh-huh,
It's not that America's not ready for a woman. It was that woman. And
right,
it's not ready for Kamala Harris. It's not because she's a woman. It's because her,
right,
specifically. So you look at some of the heroes of Americans years ago.
mhm,
Margaret Thatcher in the United Kingdom,
mhm.
widely respected and supported in the United States because she was tough, she was strong,
Right,
she was smart.
right,
And people back then, I remember at that time saying, "Oh, if we only had women like that, like
right,
Margaret Thatcher,
uh-huh,
then we'd be great. It would be so great to have that."
mhm,
So it's not anti-woman. It's
mhm,
anti-progressive, Marxist, liberal, stupid women. That's
mhm.
what it's. That's what people are against.
It's actually well, very well said. It's not because of her gender. It's because of her characters and her capacity. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then also we are talking about um the Democrats are gradually changed to a Marxism party. And from this point, a lot of people are pointing out one person who actually start the whole processing or speedy the processing, which is Barack Obama. And then people just say, start from him, the whole American changed. And some change are permanent. I'm just thinking that Barack Obama is just a regular person. Okay, he has no family background. How can he have such a
Yeah, he has some family background. His mother worked for the CIA in Indonesia.
really?
Really.
Oh, I never heard about
When
that.
when when Obama was running for office, he sent John Brennan, his future CIA director, he sent Brennan to Indonesia to go to these different places and basically try to erase the history of Obama's family and what they did in Indonesia.
Oh, his mom works for CIA? Well, that's big. That's huge. So that explains a lot of things.
Yeah,
Not how come it's like this guy from middle of nowhere and raise up and then become such a powerful person in the world. And it's not because he's American president. He is changing the whole dynamic, changing the whole nature and or culture of Democrats, the direction of Democrats. So CIA is behind him. Can we say that?
I think so. Well, the
Okay.
CIA is largely involved in almost all deep state activities. The
Mhm,
CIA, for example, going back to the assassination of John F. Kennedy
mhm,
in the in 1963, he's killed. In 1964, the Warren Commission comes out
mhm,
and says, "Oh no, it's Oswald. He's the lone assassin," and all of that.
mhm,
Later in that year, as more facts come out,
mhm,
uh, experts are debunking the Warren Commission and saying, no, 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 that's not true. This was a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy, and they name all the people that hated him, from the military to the CIA to others that had motivations to want him dead. And when they came up with these things, like Mark Lane and some of the other people, the early critical people of the Warren Commission, the term came out, invented by the CIA. That's propaganda. That's where they first started, and fake news. And all of that started with the CIA back in 1964, um, basically saying, and then the main term that they invented was a conspiracy theory. It's
mhm.
all a theory. Well,
Right.
gradually, over all these years, more and more of what was started as theory has been proven to be fact. But it doesn't matter. You still have this, public perception that, well, Oswald must have done it. He was a communist. All of that. All of that's not true. Oswald went to Russia because he was basically hired by the Office of Naval Intelligence, along with a number of other Navy personnel, to pretend like they hate the US and denounce their citizenship and want to be communist and want to go to Russia. That's
Mhm,
what they did. So Oswald, did that too. And they were all hired as spies for the US to pretend like they wanted to go to the Soviet Union at the time and be spies. The Soviet Union, KGB, knew of this program. They were wise to it.
mhm.
So every time an American Navy personnel come over and pretended like they're a communist, they assigned a female KGB agent to basically seduce honeypot,
Uh-huh.
seduce, including Marina, later to be Marina Oswald.
Mhm,
She was a recruit of the KGB, and what their plan always was, marry the soul, get the person to marry you.
mhm,
And then when they come back to the US, you come back with them.
mhm.
And then claim that he's beating you or some marital violation,
Oh,
and get a divorce. And then when you've got a divorce, you can run all around the United States and spy. By that time, you will have become a citizen
right.
and you can spy. And, that's what the CIA, Office of Naval Intelligence, is part of the intelligence community. So it's not quite a subsidiary of the CIA, but almost
Mm,
close. And so Oswald was part of a program. And part of the proof that he was part of the program is when he decides, okay, I'm coming back to the 2 years in uh, Minsk, he decides to come back to the United States. He gets his passport back in like 2 months. He had turned in his passport, denounced his citizenship. I'm a communist. And now all of a sudden, 2 years later, he comes back, and a normal citizen applying for a passport, it might take 6 months.
mhm.
He
He's
gets his back almost immediately because it
express.
was part of the program. Interesting about Oswald, when he gets discharged out of the military, he's very upset. Connally, the governor of Texas at the time, was Secretary of the Navy.
Mhm.
And Oswald goes to Austin, Texas, to the Capitol to try to meet with him and persuade him to get a higher grade discharge, like an honorable discharge. I think
Mhm.
he just got either a general, I don't think it was dishonorable, but general. And Oswald's basically saying, I was a patriot. What I
Mhm.
did was heroic.
Right.
And he wanted a higher classification of separation from the military, which he didn't get. So there were even some that speculated that he actually wanted to kill Connally and had no gripe against Kennedy himself. And he had told Marina had said that. Others around Oswald said he actually liked Kennedy.
Mhm.
So,
It's a
but conspiracy theory. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory.
um,
Okay.
so it make me wonder who is behind CIA? Who is really control the CIA? Or CIA controlled by whom? It's a
Well, you
legit.
have big business, big military,
Mhm.
donor class,
Mhm.
billionaires, all of that want the CIA to carry out their business. And for years, you look at from 1947 when they were created, the original CIA agents that were hired, or they call them officers. A CIA agent is actually a paid informant, a civilian.
Mhm.
Unlike the FBI, where an FBI and an
Mhm.
FBI agent is a government employee hired by the FBI. But in the CIA, they're called officers.
Oh.
And the original officers of the CIA, many of them were former military, and
Mhm.
many of them were sent into countries like the countries in South America where they were trying to overthrow the governments, not because they were just communist and all that, but on behalf of the fruit industry.
The,
So
the which industry?
bananas,
Oh,
the companies that harvested fruit in those
right.
countries,
Mhm.
the CIA was supporting them. And if the government was unfavorable, or if the government was left wing or communist and wanted to seize the company, that's when the CIA stepped in and tried to overthrow them to be favorable to American business interests. So the CIA has been doing that kind of activity all along from their inception.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. So this is not only a intellectual company, organization. This is doing some big business for the other industry or for the other government, for
Yeah,
the
and
other.
the U.S. government would use the CIA and or military. Some cases, we sent soldiers into those countries to basically change the government, commit a coup.
So it is
So,
for American interest or for some special interest groups' interest to see what the CIA have done. And are they
well,
done that?
mostly it's for these big companies and all of that on behalf of America, but it's on behalf of those companies and their profits.
So they're not like a service to our country or to American people. They
Now, in
just
some cases, what they do may actually coincide with American interest and the interest of the company. But in many cases, that doesn't matter.
not their main purpose.
Not always, no.
Mhm. So talk about, well, thank you so much for just tell us what CIA really did and really are doing right now. And then for the election. So I just wonder if we
If we
win,
could back up 1 second.
go ahead.
Right now, the CIA and the United Kingdom's MI6, which is their counterpart, James Bond service in England, those two agencies, MI6 and CIA, are very much running what's going on in Ukraine, very much in charge of U.S. operations there.
Ah,
So that's typical of what they would do.
right. So no wonder Boris Johnson went to Ukraine when Ukraine and Russia will have a deal. And he jumped out and went there and said, no, no, no. We need you guys to fight. No
Yeah,
peace.
we'll pay you everything you need. We'll give you all the resources you require for as long as it takes.
Right,
Well, already now, it's not going to happen. Ukraine's losing. We've pretty much destroyed Ukraine,
right.
pretty much,
The
as a
boards,
result of funding the war
right.
to the extent we funded it. And we want regime change in Russia, and we want all of this stuff. And interestingly, Putin, if you say something favorable, oh, you're a Putin apologist, you're a commie, you're something.
Mhm.
Well, the truth is, Putin has always been very pro-Western from
Right.
back in the day,
Hmm.
when he was running the KGB in St. Petersburg.
Hmm.
He's always been exposed to Western ideas in Germany, other European countries. So he's not anti-NATO, anti-European, anti-US. But now that we're trying to destroy his country with sanctions and military action and everything that we're doing, you're wondering at what point will his patience run out and
Hmm.
he'll counterattack.
Right. This is their purpose. They want Putin to hate us and to fight with us. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just mentioned KGB. So what is the relationship between KGB and CIA? They're always the
Back in the day, of course, the KGB, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the KGB was eliminated, but the KGB had about 8 different divisions under it,
oh,
and they had different names, different purposes. What happened is those different divisions became independent agencies.
oh,
So one of the agencies that pretty much was former KGB is the Federal Security Service of Russia, FSB.
mm-hmm,
FSB is very close to the FBI's
hmm.
equivalent. The CIA equivalent in the former Soviet Union in Russia were like military and the GRU, military intelligence, other components,
Hmm.
and much different than that what it was under the Soviet Union. They became independent
Right.
agencies, so to speak. Now, for years, with the terrorism after 9/11, the terrorism in Chechnya, other places that were part of Russia, um, the Russians worked with us. When I was running international operations at the FBI, we had a lot of cooperation with the Russians, helping us to try to defeat terrorism coming out of Chechnya.
Hmm.
Now, what happened with Chechnya, it's one of the small provinces of Russia. When the
Right.
Soviet Union dissolved, several got their independence, but Chechnya did not.
Hmm.
And the reason was Chechnya has a lot of mineral resources in the ground. So,
Oh,
so when the Russia kept Chechnya, but you
hmm.
have a large Muslim population in Chechnya
Right.
that started waging terrorism against
Hmm.
Russia predominantly when it was Russia,
Hmm.
including the Opera House takeover in Moscow, several other large attacks. And in
Hmm.
fact, the Russians then went after them very aggressively and killed many of the members of Chechnyan uh, Muslim fighters. And their widows became the Black Widows, they were nicknamed, who were also terrorists, who waged a number of attacks on their own. So at that time, we were worried about them coming to the U.S. committing terrorism, and we were exchanging information with the Russians at the time, the FBI and FSB.
Hmm.
So there have been times when it's been in our mutual interest to help each other.
That's
Not
nice.
always, but when it is in mutual interest, it happens.
Right. So what's their capacity, at your opinion, when you cooperate with them? Are they very strong on their what they're doing, or they are just have
I'll give you an example of you remember when the Olympics were held by Russia,
uh-huh.
and many of the Chechens, they did an attack on the main train station in the town, and then um, the Chechnyan terrorists were threatening to pretty much attack across the board, attack the Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
and What happened then was that we find out later the uh, the FSB and other components of Russian intelligence, they knew who the terrorists were. They went to their families and they went to the terrorists and said, if, like in the family's case, if your son or daughter commits a terrorist act at the Olympics,
Mhm.
we will kill you and every member of your family.
Whoa.
Questions asked. We'll kill everybody. And they made that threat all over to all these Chechnyan families and Chechnyan known to
Wow.
be future terrorists.
Uh-huh.
That's why there was not one attack on the Olympics, not one. That's how they do business. Now, could you imagine in this country, the FBI showing up at your door because they suspect your son or daughter being a terrorist and
Mhm.
telling you, we're telling your son or daughter that we're going to kill you, your husband, your parents, your cousins, and your children. If
Mhm.
if one attack happens, you're going to die.
Oh,
That was pretty powerful, and it worked.
yeah, it worked. That's the thing. That's the thing. Well, thank you so much for sharing the wonderful story. And then I know that for this election, the whole world is eyes on America. I have lots of audience, and every time, almost every time, they just said, we are not American people, but we are looking at you guys. If American fail, we'll fail. The whole world fail. So I'm just thinking the situation. If Trump got elected and then the Congress lost, we do not have Senate, we do not have Congress. So what's gonna happen? What do you think will gonna happen if we only have the White House take back?
I think normally, they refer to the senators, the congressmen, and everybody in the same party as down ballot. And so the support of Trump should trickle down to have more senators elected that are Republicans, more members of the House of Representatives. So it's almost hard to imagine Trump being president and the House and the Senate staying Democrat. Now, the one aspect of it is, first of all, he can issue all the presidential decrees that
Mhm.
Biden did and undo them. They're not law.
Mhm.
So Biden, with his hundreds of executive orders coming out of the White House, Trump can undo every one.
Right.
And so that's for the beginners. Secondly, the crazy laws that Congress is liable to pass if both houses are Democrat, he can just veto them.
Mhm.
They're going to then require a two-thirds vote
Mhm.
to override the veto. And depending what it is, that'll be very difficult. So, and the other thing is that, especially the House of Representatives, they have to run for re-election every 2 years. So
Mhm.
if Trump was to get in and the House was to turn Democrat and obstruct everything he's trying to do, um, you'd see a reckoning 2 years later in the next election. 2026
Mhm.
is going to be the midterm election.
Mhm.
Now, every 2 years, the senators run, their term is 6 years.
Yes, all right.
House of Representative, their term is 2 years. So they're constantly running, raising money to get reelected.
Mhm.
But in the Senate, their term is 6 years. The founding fathers didn't want the full Senate turning over too much. They wanted some continuity. So
Mhm.
every election, only 1/3 of the Senate is up for election, is up for
Mhm.
reelection again.
Mhm.
So what happens is that a senator gets elected, he's in for 6 years.
Mhm. Right.
But you still have every 2 years, a third of the Senate is up for election, is up
Right.
for reelection, or if the senator resigns or dies, the seat is vacant.
Mhm.
And then the term, if a senator leaves office during the middle of the 6 years, like Barack Obama did when he became president, the person that the governor appoints to replace that senator only serves out the rest of that term.
Right. Right. Right.
So if there's 3 years left on that term, they serve 3 years. That's
Mhm.
what happened in Obama's case. I think he was a senator about 2 years when
Right.
he became president.
Right. Right.
So when his replacement got picked, it was only to finish Obama's term and
The
then
rest.
have the next election.
Right. Well, so this is a good news that if Trump got elected, we probably going to have both Congress branch, and then also as a president, he has a lot of power to push his policy to
Oh,
the
absolutely.
yeah. So that is
Because then
really
don't forget, you
rich.
not only have the ability to veto whatever the
Right.
Congress passes,
Right.
but he appoints all the cabinet officers.
Right.
So morons like Mayorkas are going to be gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Merrick Garland, gone. All of these very Buttigieg, transportation secretary, gone.
Yeah. Right. Right. That's
Adios. So
mhm.
when that happens, that's where a lot of the power comes from
Right.
these cabinet positions.
Right.
So he'll have control of that. He has control of dealing with the rest of the world, becomes
Right.
our chief ambassador to deal
Right.
with other countries, to decide whether to send the military, whether to invade. And
Mhm.
he's bragged
Mhm.
that he didn't start any new wars in his 4 years of presidency.
Mhm.
And I think that's what the Democrats are having the most trouble overcoming is that Trump has a presidential record.
Right.
He wasn't a fascist. He wasn't a tyrant. He wasn't all of those things. He didn't go after his enemies.
Mhm.
He didn't go after Hillary Clinton or some
Right.
of the other enemies that he had politically.
Mhm.
Now they're saying he's going to do that. Well, maybe because he should have done it the first time. But in any event, um, what they're saying it's going to be a Trump presidency, he has a record.
Mhm.
How was his last presidency? Did he do any of that in his last presidency?
Right.
So
To most of people, I think most of people like the facts speak louder. Just like you said, he has a record.
yeah, he has a record.
Right. So very clear record. And also last questions for you is a private question. You don't need to answer is if Trump got elected and he asked you to um, go back to FBI to work to serve a little bit, would you like to do that?
You know, if you get requested by the President of the United States
Mm-hmm.
to do something that's important,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I can't imagine saying no. Now, am I looking to be in charge of the FBI right now? Any of that? I'm too old, and you know.
No, they're not.
But how would you say no? I just can't. I couldn't refuse a request to try to do something so important, support fixing the FBI, because right now under Biden, Merrick Garland, and Gray, it has become so political
Mhm.
that it's an almost evil organization because of that. It's just horrible.
Okay.
So I think that we see this now. I've joked with people sarcastically that because you have the FBI, the Biden administration investigating Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt on Trump. You have the FBI and Department of Law Enforcement from Florida
Mhm.
investigating, the golfing incident a couple of weeks ago or last week.
Mhm.
So, that's one of the things where if the FBI gets asked about Butler 3 years from now, they're going to say, "Oh, we can't talk about that. It's a pending investigation."
He will do that.
You're not going to have that with. That's why they do not want Florida law enforcement involved in any way, even though they have every right. They have dual jurisdiction.
Mhm.
The federal laws that were violated are state laws also. Attempted murder, weapons violations, the other things that he's done. So, so I think that that's a huge difference that you have a governor in Florida that's going to be very aggressive,
Mhm.
backing up his lead law enforcement agency in the state, Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And you're going to hear along the way what they're finding, what they're doing, what charges they're considering, the state prosecutors are considering. And I think that Merrick Garland, Merrick Garland will be gone, but the FBI is scared of it. They're afraid of the competition that they can't. 3 years from now, say investigation pending, when the
Hmm.
Department of Law Enforcement in Florida is going to be breathing down their neck,
Hmm.
releasing facts, releasing information to the public that's important.
Right. I think if Garland gone, Christopher Wray has to go. I don't think he can stay if Trump go back to White House. He can stay
Well,
at.
technically he could, but I don't. I think Trump realizes that he's made an enormous mistake.
Mhm.
And Christopher Wray, what happened was that Wray was recommended by Chris Christie, former New Jersey governor,
Mm.
because the law firm, after Wray was at the Department of Justice,
Mhm.
then he goes to private practice for a big law firm. That law firm defends the New Jersey officials in what was called Bridgegate,
Mm.
that Chris Christie was involved in being accused of it. And they were successful. So they successfully defended the governor and his staff.
Mhm.
And that's why later in the transition team, Christie recommended that, oh, this Ray, he's a great attorney. He's a great guy. He'll be great. And by that time, Trump had already gotten rid of Comey. Such upheaval was going on that he said, okay, I'll recommend him. And then regretted it and didn't feel like he could immediately fire the next
Mhm.
director of the FBI. So
Right.
I think that, you know, I don't know what'll happen if Kamala wins, but I think if Trump or any Republican was to win, that would be the end of Christopher Wray running the FBI.
Right.
And as I had put it, running it into the ground.
Right. Right. So maybe you should get ready. And I think you deserve it because
Yeah, don't get me excited about fixing the FBI.
but you do love FBI. That I can tell. You do.
Yeah, my colleagues and I, uh, we always joke that if you cut us, we would bleed Bureau Blue.
Pure blue.
That's how much we care about the FBI. And a couple of weeks ago, I think I mentioned at the time on the show, September 9th was the 45th anniversary of being sworn in as an FBI agent.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Remember that.
9979 was the date.
Wow.
And so all my classmates that are still alive, we exchange emails and congratulate each other and everything, and are talking about are we going to have a 50th reunion somewhere, or pick some city and get together. So
You
that
guys
may happen. There was 30 in my class. Uh,
still they 30 people in your class?
yeah,
Wow, that's
new
good.
Asian class. And of them, I would say probably, well, at least half are, are still alive. Now, at the time, when I was hired at that time, I was third from the youngest in my class. I was
Oh,
27 years old.
mhm.
So that means that the majority of the class
I'm
was older than
older.
me. Some of them are, already passing on.
But you guys are national treasure. I really appreciate what you have done for this country. Thank you so much. And you guys still love this country so dearly. And then you will still in your way to distribute to yeah contribute to our country. I
Right.
truly believe that. And I see so many. We have the old uh, our let's see how many, one two three, about six or five people just say hi to you, and
Hello.
then yeah, they just really appreciate your the information that you give us, and yeah, the wisdom you give us, and the story and the experience. And we do need to learn from you. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will do the Chinese version later today, and I'll fax to you. And then for the last question about the election, what do you want to say to people for the coming up election? Some people maybe already did vote, right?
Yeah, voting has started here in Virginia, where I live. I think it just started yesterday, I believe.
Right.
But my wife and I are going to go vote this afternoon
Oh,
after we finish this, because moving from Fairfax County to now living in Loudoun County as of a week or so ago.
Mhm.
Um, it'll take a while to register, change drivers, like all of that. It'll take a while, and I don't want to miss the election by
Right.
having it be delayed. So we're going to go ahead and vote now while we're eligible to vote in
Hey,
Fairfax
great.
County. So we're going to go ahead and make sure our vote's in and we get counted. But, normally people like me will normally say, well, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for.
Mhm.
But just make sure you vote and everything.
Mhm.
I am going to tell you, if you don't vote for Trump and you let Kamala Harris become the next, uh, you're a moron. You're allowing this country to be severely hurt,
Right.
severely. And you may not like Trump, his personality, or maybe he's mean sometimes, or too aggressive, or you name it. But she's going to ruin the country with her Marxism. All of the things that she's saying now, she's lying. She's
Mhm.
been against fracking, for instance, in the energy industry for many years. Now, all of a sudden, oh, I believe in fracking.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, all these policies she's coming up with,
Mhm.
it's the first time in her professional career that she has been on the side of some of these policies. You can't believe it.
Mhm.
So she gets elected. She's going to be more dangerous than Biden has been.
Mhm.
The only reason Biden's now more dangerous is because he's so feeble and
Mhm.
impaired. I'll put it that way.
Mhm.
She's less feeble. She's not smarter. I think she's pretty stupid, but she could be smart like a fox and do a lot of damage.
Mhm. And she will. She
She
will.
will.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I wish you have a good time to vote. And I will put the last part that you said you need to vote Trump for this time. Otherwise, this country will hurt so badly. I'll put this part at the very beginning of this program when I translate, because I
And the
think,
other, you hate to say this, but the other reason for Trump is that his vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, is brilliant. He's really, really good.
mhm,
And so we cannot disregard the fact that they want Trump dead. Today, after the election, after the inauguration, no matter how they cut it, if he becomes president,
mhm,
it's going to be very hard to prevent them from killing him
mhm,
and having J.D. Vance become president. Now, in the case of Kamala Harris, look at who she's picked as her vice president. Just a flat out comment. Here's a guy that took 30 trips to China,
yeah,
went to all the markets and bought
yeah,
Chairman Mao's little red book so he could hand them out as gifts
yeah,
and brag about how did he afford being sent to China, all of that. He's kind of like the guy that tried to kill Trump. Where'd all the money come from to take all those?
exactly, exactly.
So, so this guy Woltz, and not only that, any looking at their record, what he did in Minnesota, allowing the majority of the damage done in Minneapolis was done before he did anything.
Mhm,
So even 2, 3 days
mhm.
when they're burning out police stations and courthouses and businesses and killing
Right,
people, to
right,
this day, downtown Minneapolis still looks like a war zone. Looks like
right.
Europe after World War II.
Right, right. And talk about team. This guy, this morning, I just saw the news this morning. He went to visit Alexandra Soros and Humar. And this is the second time he visited them
Yeah,
within 1 month.
right.
Yeah. So he's a representative of them, not
Right.
American people. And the
Yep.
Democrat is the representative party of Soros and his group.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so very much. We'll have more people come here and to say hi to you and say thank you to you. Thank you so much. And then next week, maybe we can talk about more serious thing. We can go deep a little bit, dig into Obama, his history, his mother. This is my first time to know that his mom's work in FBI, no, CIA. This is new to me. So we can maybe
Yeah,
talk
and that's why when Obama was running for office, he sent John Brennan
right.
to Indonesia to try to cover the tracks of Obama.
Right.
And then later, Brennan, he becomes head of the CIA. So,
Wow.
yep.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll talk about more next week. I think most of our audience are interesting on this
Okay.
story. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And be prepared. Who knows? Maybe you're going to go back to FBI someday.
We'll
Okay.
see.
So we'll see you next week.
Okay. Thank